I was looking into some general, like, I had to go and look at the Japanese text before I even made this video, because there's some specifics I at least wanted to look into before I made it. So the reason is, we've had naming specific like wordage within the verse before with becoming a dragon as like dragonification, but recently we had naming calling it dragonization, which it's like slightly different wording, but the Japanese seems to be mildly different, and it's just slightly different. And the reason I think that is based off of the effect that we've seen presented from like the differences of where they're at, because right now the dragonization with a Z seems to be more of what's happened to the members of Fire and Flame who became dragons through the seeming like alchemy plus whatever that the Signario sisters did, whereas dragonification seems to be more of the process and effect of dragon slayer magic. And there's actually a third kind of like in between that exists within the verse, like a very niche one that you can look at, that's kind of it's like a very easy stepping stone in between the two styles that I think is really useful. And so I'll get to that in a moment. It's one that's like, it'll make sense if you just hold on for a moment. But for the first bit, we can talk about dragonification. We know this from relatively throughout the series. I'll get some panels really fast as I'm going about this. But we know about dragonification, as it's been called throughout the series, because it leads you to eventually becoming a dragon. It turns you into a dragon in the process of it. And I think the easiest example that we saw was from, you can either go with Irene, but Irene's was like the original but very abrupt. She rage transformed into it. But I think with Nibaru is personally, I think, the best general example, because from what we saw from 5th generation dragon slaying magic, that their dragon force is like this very fast, uncontrollable, like berserker type version. And any of the time we've seen Dragon Force in the series, if you just look at the steps, like Natsu back in Tower of Heaven, Natsu later in the Erasion Sace arc, to Natsu in Alvarez, to Natsu in Ermina, there's degrees as it goes. And then you look at other characters and how their Dragon Force is different, because they're obviously different types of dragon. But Natsu is the one that you can look at and immediately say, okay, well, this is going to be, their kind of standpoint, and then as they progress from there. But with Nibaru, we saw him essentially go through, I would assume, probably maybe 80% of his transformation. The one that we saw at the end, I don't think was his full dragon form. Like, one, he didn't have any wings. I don't think that, like wings aren't mandatory, but I feel like some form of flight on the dragons is almost needed. Like, it seems very specific if a dragon can't fly. Someone like Alderaan, like relatively all the other dragons have some form of flight. So unless it's something that I feel like would be crazy just to see fly around, again, like Alderaan, I would assume there's going to be wings on them at some point in the transformation, or some form of wing equivalent. Like Atlas Flame has fire wings that pretty much just act as wings in general. But through the process of dragonification, at least from what we've seen, it is again through the aspects of dragon slaying magic. So it's done in a way that you already have dragon slaying magic. When you take the dragonification process, it only increases it directly increases your core of dragon slaying capability. So it's like, say if you're permanently 5% a dragon, now you're permanently 20% a dragon. All of your dragon slayer abilities are dramatically increased, because all aspects of how you fight are going to be dramatically powered up from just the fact that you are more dragon-like. So you're going to have much more potent of whatever your element is. You're physically going to be stronger, physically going to be more durable. You're going to be able to be faster, higher stamina. Like, it's all the general things that would come from getting that boost. Whereas with dragon, I'll pull up Nibaru. I mean, I'm using it for the picture of him. I didn't set too well going into this, so I'm not as prepared as I should have been for just general pictures. Like, I was thinking more of like, will I be wrong technically on like the wording? But it seems to be like the Japanese seems to be slightly off. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't want to go too much into it right now. But see, it's like Nibaru. He's turning into a dragon, but like with the way that he now has like this like steam coming off him, it's from the acid aspects of his ability. So when we saw when he was fighting Wendy, he's able to just seemingly use like acid burn people on touch. So his whole body is having it, because you would assume once you get to the point where you're an acid, like a, you know, his is like a sticky dragon, but it has acid in one of the areas of like how his abilities work, like acidic. And so it's like, okay, yeah, he has this as a, you know, defensive like scalability on him as he gains more dragon-like properties. So the difference though is when we look at, say, any of the members of Fire and Flames, you know, you look at like Wed, for example, the difference seems to be that when you're dragonized, it's giving you, it's just straight turning into a dragon, whereas like it's the difference of dragonification is the natural evolution of dragon slaying magic, so it's built into dragon slaying magic, whereas dragonization seems to be more of somebody that was turned into a dragon from an outside source, and it would be in a way that would increase their capabilities because you're still getting that dragon buff. Like say you have, I'm trying to think, like if you have just a, I'm trying to think of a magic that's very niche, that's not like a direct element. If you had something like, say, you know, easy example, say you have something like archive magic and then you got dragonized, maybe it would essentially evolve into kind of like how law dragon magic works, something like that. So if you didn't have, like, you'd become a dragon, and essentially if somebody copied the style of what you gained or like what you achieved, it would be a new style of dragon slaying magic essentially. Like say Brian, let me pull up a picture of Brian, actually. I'll use him instead of Wed. Say you have Brian. We don't have a name for Brian's magic, but let's just say it's called like Maw magic, like M-A-W, like it's a big open abyssal maw. And once he gains fire, because it's like he's also, you know, they have to have fire magic in some way, similar for Fire and Flame, and he gains dragon magic, just I would imagine just baseline of it, well, dragon abilities and then magic of his own implemented, so it's essentially the same thing. It's a different style. You aren't using magic to turn into dragon slaying magic the same way. It's like a weird technicality thing of how like the energy like kind of forms and like the style of magic seemingly. But let me pull up Brian. What it was, right, or I think like mid 160, or no, sorry, mid 170, late 160s, like early 170s, because it was like right after Lucy went and bodied, well, Lucy and Brandish bodied Caramel, and then we're dealing with Mercphobia. But with someone like that, like say you again, you had like Maw magic, and then it becomes like fiery, like dragon fire maw magic or something, you know, just you add the extra thing because it's like a fire dragon buffed version of what you have. But it isn't say you gain dragon slaying magic, it would just give the dragon buff to what you already have. And let me pull them up really fast. Just a picture of Wed, or not Wed, of Brian in general. Because Brian, I think Brian, I'm really hoping we get him to come back one more time, or at least, and to have a further progressed dragon form, because of the fact that it will give us it'll get us a really good kind of display of like what the further progression of dragon abilities does for you. Let me just, here we go. I'll just pull up just the one of Wed using his like cool hat mouth with, you know, complete with dragon horns, and then he's just spewing out fire from it. Because I actually like Brian. I'm really hoping he has that spot again, kind of like how Kyria was, but more so to show the progression of the dragonization buff and like how it goes. Because at this stage, I would assume it is more so like you're just getting, like, kind of like how Wendy was when Wendy was giving people the dragon attribute during the fight against Mercphobia back in Ermina. So it'd be like if you had this magic, like if you had this Maw magic, or, you know, whatever it's called, and you give the dragon buff, like how Wendy would do it, kind of like how he is now, would be like if Wendy buffed him, plus he has like the physical buffs of being a dragon, regeneration, anything that having those dragon skills have, but also just this additional kind of bonus of having dragon, you know, the dragon boost and the dragon attribute onto you. Let me pull up Wed, or not. I keep saying Wed. It's like I'm trying to give Brian a little credit, but I keep talking about Wed just accidentally because he's just the one that's been taking the spotlight for so long. Let me pull up. Like I said, I like him. He has a spot right now to be kind of like Kyria, where Kyria was constantly showing up in Deco Metal Avatar. At some point, I got to get a new one of these. See, I'm doing it again. Which one was? I think it was. Yeah, there we go. Nope, definitely not what I meant to do. There we go. So we got just him in general. Like he had differences of how to use his mouth. Like, oh my god, I'm just moving stuff all in the worst general ways, aren't I? But in the way that he does it, I like that the general added horns. It almost looks like this weird cannon, and I imagine just in general making it more powerful and everything in there is just going to give it more of a bonus of power, I would assume, in general. But the character, just because I'm already at 10 minutes, I don't want to go on for too long, because I wanted to just give a general like little minute of credit to Brian. The character that I wanted to talk about, let me pull him up. If you've read the Twin Dragons of Sabertooth, the Gaiden, there's a character in it, and he's the last boss in it, and his name is like, I'm trying to remember exactly pronunciation, Toparge or something, Toparge. But he essentially, he uses earth magic, right? He uses earth magic, and he set up this trap in order to absorb the dragon attribute and power of like the dragon lacrima from Sting once he lured Sting into a trap. Let me see. Do I have it in this? No, I think I got it in this folder. He lured Sting into a trap, had a whole setup where he absorbed the dragon attribute magic and put it into his magic, which ultimately ended up giving him dragon slaying capabilities, essentially, like, but not in the same way that you would assume. It was in a, or which picture is this? I've got like all of my stuff messed up. I didn't label these, so it's like, oh, there's Nubaro again. Here we go. He essentially like coated himself in this and turned himself, because he looks kind of like, if you look at it, like he has the spiky hair and like these like almost Naruto head. I don't know what the thing is actually called. The first thing I think of is like the Naruto headband. It's not that, but easiest description of it in the world. But he's got like a head protector thing kind of going on. He's got this spiky hair, and it's in like an earth dragon form. And it's like, we've seen Dogramag, and Dogramag is actually shaped somewhat like this. Like, he doesn't have the wings, and it makes sense because he didn't absorb all of their power. He got enough that he was able to do this. Sting and Rogue were able to defeat him, but this guy essentially did like a kind of like an in-between of what they're doing between dragonification and dragonization. With dragonization, it seems to be like you are, your magic gets influenced by dragon, the dragon attribute and the dragon, the dragon of buff and process just naturally. Whereas like someone like Cobra had poison magic, but then he gained poison dragon slaying magic, but he also gains sound magic. He didn't gain sound dragon slaying magic. So it's not like because he has dragon slaying magic through his poison dragon lacrima, he didn't just automatically gain sound magic. Whereas like say if sound dragon slaying magic, whereas say if he was turned dragon like from dragonization, similar to how Fire and Flames did, learning sound magic would eventually get to the state where he essentially has sound dragon magic in idea, if he did it theoretically in the same way, because there'd be like a way that dragons can do stuff naturally through their race, but then there's the idea of like, if dragons really moved around with magic and kind of learned something but then applied their dragon attribute to it, I imagine that would be a lot more difficult than just say oh yeah, I'm a dragon, I can just do this. You'd have to probably get to like enchanting level to where you can apply the attribute to it. It's not something that is any dragon can do, but it's something that maybe they could do like through extensive research and capabilities, like looking into the style of it. But it's like, they're a dragon, they have the capability, they have the time for it, and they have the power level and stuff for it. It should just be one of them actually putting the dedication and time to achieve this. So as it were, like if you look down into like the basics of it, it would be like if you had a magic already and you learned, say, fire dragon slaying magic, your other magic doesn't get the buff as well. Where it's like if you learned, if you had three regular ass magics, and then you get dragonized, you would get seemingly a dragon buff to all of your magics. And then the difference is like seemingly with this guy Toparg, whatever his name is, if you absorb the dragon power directly and apply it to whatever magic you have, you're almost making this crude fusion of the two that's not like 100%, but it's like this is like the idea of you doing it imperfectly, whereas the way to do it properly would be either through dragonification, becoming a dragon and then learning it, or having it and then getting dragonized, where you are being induced and forcibly turned into a dragon through an outside source that's, you know, as shown, does affect all of your other abilities, because there just seems to be like a natural bonus that dragon magic has, as we've seen throughout the series. And for example, again, this guy from Sting and Rogue spinoff, it gives this guy some really good lore and reasoning for him to exist. I'll probably do a video on this, and the video, like the value of this spinoff right now, going into this arc. But other than that, tell me your thoughts about this, because I think it's really cool when we have stuff in the series where it's you have two similar ideas, but they have a split and diverging point. It's kind of like how you have curses and black magic. They both delve in the same area, but curses split from magic entirely and became its own thing, whereas black magic is a like darkened, diluted thing of magic, but it can reach into curses, because seemingly devil slaying magic is a black magic that that induces a curse in the process. But curses and magic are two split things. Black magic is like a magic that is it is still magic, but it's split and gone away while still being magic towards curses without breaking away from it. It's like weird things and kind of like technicalities for it, where it's like we have similar things of like you can be turned into a dragon through dragonification, which is something that's more of the evolution of a specific magic, and dragonization is more so it requires a specific method, but can be applied to to far more people directly, rather than something be a direct result of a specific person's ability. Other than that, comment below and tell me your thoughts about all this, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.